Oh,
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Young Guns, and we are here with the victorious Melissa Triebwasser. Melissa, how does it feel to be going to the final?
It's still unbelievable, guys. Like what's it been, 72 or 96 hours? I can't even keep track. It felt kind of like a dream. It just hits me all over again every few minutes that, holy crap, TCU won a playoff games playing for a national title. Like, it's one of the most unbelievable feelings I've ever had. Certainly, like, the coolest feeling I've ever had in sports.
I'm very happy you won. I was celebrating with my
Appreciate that.
family. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
it was quite the experience. And I'll tell you, one of the coolest parts about this is the amount of people that reached out to me. Like, the minute the final buzzer sounded, from all over the Big 12 conference, from all over the country, people I've interacted with. Like, it was really cool just to kind of, just everybody seemed to be really like genuinely happy and excited for TCU fans, and for those of us that have covered the team for a long time. So that was a really cool kind of bonus. So I appreciate the support as always.
Yeah. Boo blue. I'll say that. Boo blue.
Also that.
All right.
so how does the team morale seem going into this game, and you're basically a 2-touchdown underdog?
I think it's right where Sonny Dykes wants to be. The way that Michigan talked and the way that the national writers talked about TCU going into the Fiesta Bowl in the semifinal, 100% that fueled those guys, coaches, players, and they admitted away from it that they were reading the bulletin board material, and it didn't impact their preparation, but it certainly gave them a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And just like TCU's been all year, I said it throughout the season that Sonny Dykes was in the rare position of having an undefeated team for 12 games and still being able to honestly say nobody believes in us. Because even when TCU was 12-0 and headed to the Big 12 championship, there were a lot of doubters. They were a touchdown and a half underdog at Texas, despite the fact that, they were 7-0 or 8-0 or whatever it was. They were underdogs at Baylor. They were, big underdogs to Oklahoma to start the season, underdogs to Oklahoma State at home. And so, I think for Sonny Dykes, his team is comfortable not being believed in and being doubted. That's what motivates them. They're a veteran team, so they're able to not get too emotional about it. But I wish, honestly, that Georgia would talk as much crap about TCU as Michigan did, because I think that little extra juice kind of helped carry those guys to the finish line. And the last thing I'll say on that too is I've talked to some of the guys over social, and I've listened to the press conferences this week, and I think for TCU fans, for the administration, for people in the athletics department that aren't a direct part of the football team, TCU's already won just by getting here. But there is not a player in that program that believes that. They are not drinking the Kool-Aid. They are not buying into their own. They fully believe that they're going to come out and play for a national championship and compete for a national championship Monday night. I don't think that they're, have any illusions about what they're up against, but they certainly are not satisfied. That Fiesta Bowl win is not what they came for. And so I think they're going to have a real good balance of enjoying the moment and being excited about the opportunity, but also, they're a really good football team. And when is TCU ever going to play for a national championship ever again? This could legitimately be the one time in my lifetime I see it happen. And I think the players recognize the gravity of the situation, and they want to finish the job.
Coming into this season, TCU, obviously no one thought they were going to make the playoff, and no one thought they were going to have the season that they've had. But regardless of the result in this game against Georgia, whether they win or lose, in the future, do you think that TCU's expectations will be raised at all, or do you think there's still going to be a program that they make a bowl game and you're good, or a little bit better?
I think that's a great question, because I think it depends where you're coming from, right? And so Sonny Dykes, from the day that he got to town, said that he was there to help TCU win championships, and that's what everybody says, obviously, right? But I think the program had fallen to such a for TCU a level of mediocrity that people had kind of just lost interest in raising the bar for them. And that's not a shot at Gary Patterson or anything like that. It's just that when you're a small school that most of the time is kind of irrelevant on the national stage, winning 8-9 games, getting to a bowl game, winning a bowl game every once in a while, competing for a Big 12 championship or something like that is enough for the fans. Like that'll carry you through. But when you see this program make the turnaround, they may go from being unranked in the preseason, from being picked to finish 7th, to making it to a Big 12 championship, to getting selected to play in the college football playoffs, to winning a game in the college football playoffs, the first Big 12 team to ever do that. And you look at the future of that conference, TCU signed their first top 20 recruiting class in history in the early signing period. And Sonny Dykes said, that's the expectation. We want to recruit at a top 15, top 20 level. And when you're looking at what the Big 12 is going to be with Texas and Oklahoma leaving for the SEC in the next 2 years, I mean, I think that the expectation around Fort Worth is, why shouldn't TCU be playing in a Big 12 championship game very regularly? Why should they not be the flagship program of the new Big 12? And yeah, I mean, making the playoffs regularly is, and I don't know what regular is. Is that three out of every 7 years? Is playing for a Big 12 championship 3 out of every 5 years? Is that kind of what you're thinking? I mean, I think that's what it probably should be. But at the same token, it's only going to get harder for TCU. I mean, we're looking at one more season of a team can win one game and play for national championship. And this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, like I said earlier, for TCU. And so, the bar is going to be raised. The expectation is going to be raised, but I think it's going to be more about building sustainability, not trying to win national championships. And I think that the foundation is in place for TCU and Sonny Dykes to do that. Because let me tell you this right now, talking to the people that raise money for TCU, they cannot cash the checks as fast as they're being written. So you got to capitalize on this kind of bump, because you may never have it again.
So speaking of Texas and Oklahoma leaving for the SEC, what's it like winning a playoff game before Texas and Oklahoma?
It is dark in my car, so I don't know if you could see how big my smile is when you said that, but it's awesome, right? Like, I don't know, you guys are young guys, but you probably remember, we got an Ohio State guy here, but you probably remember Gordon Gee calling TCU the Little Sisters of the Poor when they played Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. And TCU gets called little brother by Texas, and Oklahoma had beaten the Horned Frogs every year from 2015 to 2021, and it very rarely had it been pretty. And so there's been a complex, despite the fact TCU's dominated Texas since joining the Big 12. They've gotten their ass handed to them by Oklahoma time and time again, and just couldn't get over that hump except for 2014. And so, and to be the program that gets to that mountaintop first, to be the first college football team in the state of Texas to make the college football playoffs, and then to be the first Big 12 team to win a game. I mean, you're doing that kind of stuff before Texas A&M, before Oklahoma, before some of these programs that, are as blue blood as they come. It's a huge deal. So you guys know the talent in Texas for high schoolers, and now with the transfer portal, when you're Sonny Dykes, and you can go sit in a 5-star, DFW kid's room and say, hey man, you come to TCU, you can play within an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours of your hometown, and you can play for a national championship. You can play for a Big 12 title. You can be the 9th most watched program in college football. Like, that's a huge, huge deal. And you say, hey, you could win a hell of a lot more than they're winning at Texas. That means something too. The SEC has long been a lure for these top talents of, I want to go and play against the best and compete against the best. But with the transfer portal, you're seeing all of these 5-stars get to their new campuses, and they line up behind another 5-star and another 5-star and another 4-star and a 5th-year senior, and they leave. And that's why TCU has signed 3 transfers from Alabama alone.
Yeah.
And so you're starting to think now, like, do I want to go to a place and sit behind 2 or 3 guys, or do I want to go to a place and develop and watch a team mature around me so that I can compete at the highest level? And I think that's going to be a huge boon for TCU going forward. And being the first, like, just kind of adds to that.
How does it feel telling your students about this? Like, what are their reactions?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked me about that. first of all, I love living in California so much. I love being back home. I love my family. I love the weather. Like, there's so many things about living in California I love. I hate the fact that absolutely nobody in my area cares about college football. It is heartbreaking to me because if I was back in Arlington where I lived before and I had gotten to walk into my classroom, man, let me tell you this. My frenemy was an English teacher at my old school, is an A&M grad. My God, would I love to be around him this year and rub that in his face every single day. All the Texas grads that I worked with, it would have been so sweet. But my students think it's cool. They don't understand it, but I'll tell you, every Friday our seniors get to wear college shirts, and so many of them wore TCU shirts today for me, which I just thought was the cutest thing in the entire world. And so many of them emailed me after the game or ran up to me on Wednesday and were like, I was watching the game. I was looking for you on the sideline. They don't understand. And honestly, they probably don't care, but they're trying really hard to be excited for me. And I also work at an all girls school. And so girls do love sports. Obviously I'm one of them, but it's different, than being at a co-ed school. So it's been fun though. A lot of my former students at my previous school, because it's near Fort Worth, have reached out to me, and all the my coworkers and stuff know how excited it was. And the biggest thing was they gave me Monday and Tuesday off so that I could go down to this game, and it's been awesome to have that support. And our president's she's a huge college sports fan too, so she came in to talk to me about it, and she knows everybody knows how much this means to me. I don't know if it means nearly as much to them.
So, two separate questions for you real quick. So first, when the clock hit 000, meaning the game is over, what were you feeling knowing that TCU won the game? And two, what was your thoughts between the difference in press conferences between J.J. McCarthy in Michigan and Max Duggan in TCU?
Both great questions. I'll tell you the funniest story at the end of that game at the Fiesta Bowl was, so first of all, and Sonny Dyke said the same thing, we all kind of started celebrating too early because nobody knew what was going on with that targeting review. Nobody knew what was going on. I don't think the officials knew because I think it was an illegal forward fumble anyways, and so it should have been blown dead. But even if that had happened, then it could have been a personal foul. So nobody really knew what was happening. And so, I saw the players, and I'm taking pictures. So I'm trying really hard to not get so caught up in the moment that I miss the shot, right? And so we talked about that, I think, last time I was on with you guys with the Baylor game. I did not want to miss the shot. I did not want to not do my job. But I got so overwhelmed with emotion. I couldn't help it. I started bawling. And the tears were coming, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so I just let it happen. And the mascot, the Fiesta Bowl mascot, broke the #1 cardinal rule of mascotting. And he came up and he put his arm around me and he asked me, he said, "Are those happy tears?" And I was like, "You're not supposed to talk. Mascots don't speak." And I was like, "Yeah, I went to school here. I'm so happy right now." And he gave me a big hug, and we took a selfie, and it's me with just tears in my eyes and this Fiesta Bowl mascot. It's the greatest moment. Walking out onto the field with the confetti coming down. They kept trying to keep us off the field. They're like, photographers can't go on the field. But it was that was an impossible ask. So I just kept going back out there. They kept kicking me off. It was fine. But walking out underneath the confetti, looking at the players, Mark Perry's, the TCU safety, was just overcome. He was just sitting down, with his head in his hands. I mean, this is a kid who came from Colorado, which was such a bad program. And a year later, he's playing for national championship. And so seeing the players that worked so hard, and Sonny and his family, and Paul Gonzalez and his kids, and some of the players that have kids that were out there celebrating with them. It was, it just, as somebody who's been around this program for as long as I have, just the culmination of so many things. I mean, I was really emotional when TCU won the Rose Bowl. I was really tipsy when TCU won the Peach Bowl. But I was working this time, and I was just really satisfied and really just overcome with just joy and just happy tears, and it was really neat. To answer your question about the press conference, it was funny because again, I'm supposed to be working. I've got a job to do. I can't focus for shit because I was so it was so unbelievable. It's TCU winning a playoff game over Michigan is a touchdown plus underdog. What the hell? So I was trying, I just could not lock in. And thankfully, I don't write the post games because I'm editing photos and stuff. And so I kind of just was enjoying the moment. what you said, we talked a little bit before we went on. JJ McCarthy answered one question and he left. And I get it. He's young. He's 19, 20 years old. We're all, it's probably around the age y'all are, like, you young guys too. Like, we're all kind of idiots at that age, right? Like, I get it. I would have been really upset too, and probably wouldn't have wanted to answer questions from a bunch of old reporters who, are just trying to get you in trouble and to get you to say the wrong thing. But to see Max Duggan, who I sat in the Big 12 post-game press conference and tried not to cry. I guess I'm really emotional. I just cry a lot. But, watching him 45 minutes after the game ended, bawl his eyes out, not be able to compose himself, his voice catching and just so emotionally spent, so sad, so disappointed. So he felt almost guilty that TCU had lost that game, despite the fact that he's the one that willed them to get it close, right? And to see him just kind of sit there and take those questions with maturity and with responsibility. And I don't want to distill it down to this, but he sat up there and he took it like a man. And for JJ, I think it's a lesson learned. I want to punk the kid, of course I do, because he's cocky and he's got a punchable face. But at the same time, I get it, man. Michigan's been there twice. They were supposed to win this one. This was their chance, and they focused so hard on just Georgia and getting to Georgia that they forgot about TCU. And I think, he'd had 2 pick sixes. It was not his best game. He did have some really great moments, and he brought them back. It wasn't the running game that brought them back. It was him and him running. So, he gave everything. But I think that's part of it is Max Duggan was a big name recruit, but he was mired in obscurity for the past 3 seasons. And he lost his job this year and new coaching staff and, getting demoted to second string, and he stayed in the program and he did what his team needed him to do. And Max Olson, I can't remember who the other guy was. I feel bad, but The Athletic wrote a beautiful profile of Max today and his family and his recruitment story. And it just talked about why he never left, why he chose TCU, why he never left. And that he's got a real love for that university. And so I think JJ is going to grow from this. He's super, super talented. The kid's really, really good. I'm not going to take that away from him. But he's got something to learn. If he wants to bring Michigan over the hump, it's about more than what you do, on game day, what you do for that 4 hours between the end zones. It's about how you carry yourself outside of the program and what you represent and the way that you take ownership. And we saw this with Zach Wilson and the Jets, right? You're the quarterback. You got to stand up there and take it sometimes. And I hope that he does learn and grow from that. And, I don't dislike Michigan. Their fan base was annoying as hell leading up to that game, but I don't dislike that program. I have a lot of respect for Jim Harbaugh and a lot of respect for those players. They're very, very good. I enjoyed the heck out of beating them and proving them wrong and showing them that TCU is pretty big too. But, I think JJ's got a pro. Some of the balls he threw and the windows that he fit, good Lord, the kid's got talent. So I think he'll be back. I think he'll learn and grow. I think he's got a choice of, I'm either going to use this to make me a better quarterback and a better representative of my university, or I'm going to turn into a whiny little baby, and we'll see which direction he goes. But I hope for his sake, he does the right things with it.
Do you think TCU would have won the game if Michigan didn't throw the 2 pick sixes?
Oh, well, here's the thing is that first pick six, that Bud Clark pick six, totally changed the momentum. Bud Clark deserves a ton of credit. D Winters deserve defensive MVP, but TCU doesn't win that game without 3 Bud Clark plays. Number one, he makes a tackle on Donovan Edwards on that first run. If Michigan scores a touchdown on that play, that opening play, they probably win the game because I like to steal from my friend Parker Fleming here, but they're built to play in a positive game script. So the minute they were behind by 14, because Bud Clark makes that play and then Bud Clark gets that pick six, now all of a sudden they're not built to come back from 14 points down. They're built to go up 10 points and run you into the ground and lean on you and wear you down for the next 3 quarters. And they've proven that all season long they can do that. So, and then Bud Clark also, he got beat on the touchdown that got overturned when it was 14-3, but he managed to bring the guy down outside the end zone, and then they fumbled it. The fullback fumbled it on the next play. So that's 3 huge momentum swingers. So I think TCU showed they could score on Michigan, right? I think that the energy, the tempo, the game script all changed with those 2 pick sixes. And the D Winters pick six came at a time where Michigan was really starting to make their push. And if he doesn't score that ball, TCU doesn't score on that possession, and Michigan drives down the field, now you're looking at, I can't remember if it would have been a tie game or a 3-point game, but I think the timely plays came at a position to give TCU a lot of confidence and to give them a little bit of cushion when they needed it. So they were fighting back. I mean, they were punching back. Every time Michigan gave them their best shot, TCU fought back. And so I like to believe that they would have. But at the same time, I mean, those 2 defensive scores were huge. And I don't think you can overstate how important that was and to the overall game plan for both teams. It put Michigan in a place they were uncomfortable, and it put TCU in a place where they had a ton of confidence on both sides of the ball.
So basically, for this game coming up between TCU and Georgia, does TCU have to have like a couple pick sixes or a pick six and just a lot of stops, like you mentioned with the certain player that did that over and over, getting key stops? Does TCU have to have those kind of plays to happen to win, or can TCU win a game with Georgia making no mistakes?
I mean, here's the deal. Like, we heard about the talent gap with Michigan and TCU, right? The talent gap with TCU and Georgia is even more significant. Michigan's not a top 3 most talented team in the country. They're definitely a top 10. You know, they might even be a top 7, but they're not top 3. Georgia sure as hell is. And when you look at every position across the board, so all 22 positions and special teams, Georgia's probably got the advantage man-to-man at like 18 of them. You know, TCU's got the Heisman finalist quarterback. Shoot, so does Georgia. You know, TCU's got the superstar wide receiver. Georgia's got a tight end that looks like he was like made for a Marvel comic book. I mean, they're superhuman across the board. And so TCU's got a ton of talent. I don't want to take away from that. But I think they're going to need some things to break their way. And we've seen that all season long. Like, you could be like Baylor last year is a great example of this, is that turnovers are kind of chancy and they're kind of lucky and they're kind of the ball, you know, we all know football is oblong and it bounces weird. And the years that it bounces your way, you're going to win more games than the years it doesn't. And so I think there's going to have to be some of that, a pick six, a special teams touchdown. You know, we're still waiting for Darius Davis to break out. He can certainly do that. You know, another one of those, Quentin Johnston runs a 3-yard route and turns it into a 74-yard touchdown score. Like, it's going to be those types of things that they're going to need. I don't know that they're going to be able to get Georgia in a negative game script because Georgia can throw it around and they can be, I mean, we saw what they did against Ohio State. They aren't afraid of a double-digit deficit, just like TCU's not afraid of a double-digit deficit. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if they just have to line up and play football, then, yeah, Georgia probably wins. I mean, they're favored by 2 touchdowns for a reason. But if any of that magic, if any of that hypnotoad magic can travel down to Los Angeles, if any of those balls bounce the wrong way, if there's any uncharacteristic mistakes by Stetson Bennett, the insurance salesman, if you know they've got that big tight end, that 6'7" blocking tight end that was in a boot at the end of that last game, maybe he can't play. TCU might not have Kendre Miller, so that kind of evens that out. But yeah, it's going to take. You need the football gods to be smiling on you Monday night if you're TCU. And you know, my philosophy going in, I think I'd probably told you guys this to the Michigan game, was I don't expect to win because TCU shouldn't win. But everything I've seen this season tells me I won't be surprised if they do. Going into Monday night, I don't expect to win a national championship, although I will tell you that I've allowed the dreams to seep in a little bit more than they did going into the Fiesta Bowl and just thinking about what that might feel like. But I don't expect them. They are not a better football team than Georgia. What they are is a football team that's got a lot of magic and a lot of heart, and they feel a little bit like a team of destiny. And so I won't be surprised if they pull off this miraculous upset. But I'm not walking onto that field, you know, Monday night thinking, oh, we've got this in the bag. I'll sure be hoping that Georgia does, though. I need them to just be a little overconfident, too, because that obviously helped TCU with Michigan.
So, I mean, the Georgia fan base. Okay, good. Sorry, go ahead, Jackson.
So, what's the status of Kendre Miller going into the national championship at the moment?
So, he is saying he will play. TCU is saying wait and see. We believe it's a little bit of an MCL, like kind of a sprain, possibly. I if it's up to Kendra, he will play. I can promise you that. Even though he's going to probably go pro after the season, I believe that more than ever because TCU just got a commitment from Trey Sanders from Alabama, former #1 overall running back of the class of 2019. You don't bring him back if you think that Kendra is staying, right? So I think he will play. I don't know how effective he'll be, if he'll be at 100%. If he's structurally okay, which is the thing we have not gotten an answer on, if he's structurally okay, he'll be out there. If they're worried that he could further injure himself, or if they are looking out for his best interest, then I could see them sitting him. Amari DeMarcado was awesome against Michigan. If it's up to him, like I have utter faith that he'll be great. But TCU is a very different team with Kendre Miller on the field, and so I think that's a huge deal to close the talent gap with Georgia. They need Kendre out there to play. So I hope he's healthy. I don't want him to take risks. He's got a lot of money on the line here in the next couple of months, but man, like I don't want to have to go up against Georgia without one of our most important players if we can avoid it either.
So what do you think of the Georgia players feeling like they won the national championship when they beat Ohio State? Do you think that I think they're due for a bit of a letdown, at least they won't play as well as they did in that game. Don't you think?
It's gonna be really interesting because when you're Georgia, Kirby Smart is like so annoyingly good at building culture. Like he's done the Nick Saban thing, but he's done it in a much more approachable way, right? Like that those guys understand their job. They don't get too high, they don't get too low. And their biggest games this season, when they had the most to prove against Tennessee, trying to think of what they had one other big matchup. I can't remember what it was, but they came to play and to make a point to prove people wrong. Even though they have nothing to prove. I mean, they're defending national champions and they're undefeated. The only hope I have, and everybody I've talked to, all the national guys have said, you don't want to hear this, but Georgia's you're not gonna get the same kind of overlooking from Georgia that you did from Michigan. This team will have way more respect for TCU, which is a bummer for TCU fans. I think that, Stetson Bennett's a little cocky. He's getting a little cocky, but you know what? I guess he's earned that right. I think that there's a lot of respect. I think that the Georgia fan base has been really respectful, probably because they don't see us as a threat. But the Georgia players and coaches have said all the right things leading up to this. They know what conference TCU plays in. They're not going to be like Michigan in that. They're not going to talk about it being soft. They're not going to talk about smashing like J.J. McCarthy did. They're going to come out and do their job. And you hope there's a little bit of an emotional letdown because of the way they beat Ohio State. They haven't really had to do that much this year. TCU lives on that razor's edge. So there won't be an emotional letdown after beating Georgia, I don't think. What there might be is a bit of a being overwhelmed by the moment. I interviewed Mike Golick Jr. earlier this week, and he was on the Notre Dame national championship team.
That game
yeah,
was so painful.
Yeah, and he talked about even being a Notre Dame player, walking out for that national championship. He compared it to playing in the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden you realize this whole 8-9 days leading up to it, every single eye in college football is pointed squarely at you. And if you're a TCU football player, you've never experienced that before. There's never been a time where the entire country's attention was pointed on you in a game that you're playing. That's never happened. And so there's going to be a little bit of the moment being, I don't want to say too big, but really, really big for these guys. And Georgia doesn't have that. They've been here, done that. They know exactly what to expect. They know what all those camera flashes going off at kickoff is going to look like. And you can't replicate that if you're TCU and Sunday. And so they handled the Fiesta Bowl perfectly, absolutely perfectly. The lead up to it, the balance, all of that. It's going to be different for this one. And so I have a lot of confidence in Sonny Dykes and the coaching staff and the administrative staff around them to handle it well. But if you're telling me those 130 players on that TCU sideline or whatever it is, whatever the travel team number is, and those 11 guys that step on the field the first time don't pee themselves just a little bit, I find that hard to believe, right? Like that's it. I'm going to be nervous. So I can't imagine that they won't be a little bit nervous too. I just hope their maturity keeps those nerves to a minimum and it doesn't cost them a big play because Georgia's going to be ready to attack. They're not going to be nervous whatsoever because, those guys are, sophomores, juniors, seniors. They know exactly what they're going to see when that ball goes up in the air for the first time Monday night.
Yeah, 11-year-old me was bawling my eyes out that night. That was not a good night.
Yeah. I mean, I was sad too. Like, I hate the machine. Like, Alabama's great, but I hate when they win. I'll be really honest with you guys. That game Saturday night's the first playoff game I've watched since from start to finish ever. Because after 2014, I was so burned, I didn't want to watch it. And then I've tuned in little bits at a time. I usually watch the coach's film room because Gary Patterson was on it quite a bit. But I have not been super interested in the playoffs because I don't like seeing the same 5 or 6 teams compete every year. I like the stories like TCU, and most of the ones where it's been a good story like Washington or Cincinnati, those games have been over by halftime. So I haven't tuned in for an entire playoff game. This is the first time that I'm like locked in with the college football postseason when it comes to the playoffs. I love bowl games. I'll watch any bowl game, but this is a different feel for me too. I was so bitter for so long. So it's kind of fun to like every commercial, like I've scrolled through TikTok and they've got the ESPN playoff storybook thing, or like, all the merch, like all this kind of stuff that I've ignored for the last, 6-8 years, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I want to consume all of it. Like, I can't get enough. I've read so much, listened to so many podcasts. Like, I just want to hear everything about it, no matter what happens Monday night, because it's just so unbelievable that TCU's here.
So I mentioned this earlier, but in McCarthy's defense, and I usually don't say this because it's kind of gross. But he probably thought what he said because Ohio State and TCU run similar defenses.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's a fair assessment. Ohio State's secondary though is not very good. Based on what I've seen this year. I haven't watched them a ton, and that's one thing where I think they looked at Ohio State and where Ohio State and TCU are very comparable. And this is why I really wanted Ohio State to beat Georgia. Is I thought that'd be a pretty even matchup. Ohio State would have been favored, but it would have been because of the name on the jersey, not the talent on the field, right? And like CJ Stroud, Max Duggan going toe to toe would have been a blast to watch. I would have loved that. But the speed, like Ohio State has the speed at every position. And Jim Harbaugh, how he beat Ohio State was he became Ohio State. And he started recruiting speed and size in the secondary and all of those types of things. He still obviously like prioritizes the lines are still built like Big Ten lines. But he tried at the skill positions, at the quarterback position, running back, to find guys that look more like what Ohio State had been signing for the last several years. And so, yeah, I mean, I think they looked at TCU and said, oh, this is JV Ohio State. Right. And I can see the comparison, but if you like, I was listening to, I think it was Mike Golick Jr. on God Bless Football with Stu Gotts, part of the Dan Le Batard Network. And he said that Pat McAfee kind of told him the story of like the first time that he saw TCU in person at the Kansas game for College Game Day. He looked over and he was like, NFL team. Like TCU's big. TCU pound for pound, inch for inch was bigger on the offensive line than Michigan's Joe Moore winning offensive line. They are physically larger. Like this is not a small. Quentin Johnson is a legit 6'4". Like this is a team that's built like a big team, but those guys are all big and fast. I mean, Quentin Johnson 6'4" is going to probably run a sub 4.4 at the combine. Think about that. That dude is going to run a 4.4 or lower at the NFL combine. Like, that's a freak, man. Like, that is the type of guy you're used to seeing at Alabama, not at TCU. And so they underestimated them. They thought that they were a lesser version of the best team they'd seen all year. And what they found out is this isn't a lesser version. This is at worst an equal version. And they played a lot better Saturday night than Ohio State played in the game a couple months earlier.
TCU's offense, I think it's pretty obvious how they're going to win. Through the air, they have to get the secondary of Georgia. That's pretty weak for the talent that they have. You got to expose that. And then Max Duggan with the read option. But how should TCU's defense approach Georgia's offense? How should they design their defensive scheme against Georgia to slow them down or try to get the pick sixes?
This is going to be a fascinating thing, and I think you're absolutely right. Like TCU, I believe, will be able to move the ball on Georgia. I do believe they'll be able to score on Georgia because TCU's success is predicated on being able to pass the ball and a quarterback that can run the ball. We saw what CJ Stroud was able to do on the ground, and he's not a guy that's used to running, whereas Max Duggan is built to run. So I think you're right. I think that the Frogs can hopefully put some points on the board. But defensively, Michigan is built to run the ball. Like I said, get that positive game script and then just shove it down your throat for the rest of 3.5, 4 quarters. Georgia wants to throw it all over the yard. And to me, the biggest advantage that Georgia has on the field is going to be with Brock Bowers at tight end. TCU does not have a player that can stop Brock Bowers. I don't know if they have a guy that can slow him down. So he's such a good route runner, and he's so big and he's so quick. He's going to be kind of the difference maker. If you look up at halftime and he's got 5 receptions for like 96 yards and a touchdown, TCU's probably in a real bad way. But in the secondary, Ladd McConkey is hurt a little bit. He's hobbled. I trust Josh Newton and Travius Hodges-Tomlinson to at least slow down the passing attack on the outside. For all the crap, he's a really good quarterback. And he's made some plays, man, in that second half against Ohio State. Like, he's a gamer. He gets better as the game goes on. And so he's going to make some plays. And Georgia has speed that, TCU hasn't seen a talent like Georgia has on the outside. So I think they'll be able to slow down the running game, but I don't think that's going to bother Georgia. It's going to be what TCU does in the middle of the field. How do the linebackers hold up in coverage? How does Mark Perry hold up in coverage for the safety position? Bud Clark, Abe Kamara, the safeties, those guys like to take chances, and it paid off for them against Michigan. But if those pick sixes end up not getting timed correctly and they become long receptions, and Georgia's capable of doing it, that's where the problems really arise. And so I think you have to stay who you are. We saw Michigan try to become TCU. I mean, they ran a Philly special on 4th and 2 after telling us how they were going to run it down TCU's throats all week. And then when they had an opportunity on 4th and short to run it down TCU's throats, they got cute and they played with it and it didn't work out. I think Georgia's going to be consistently who they are. And so you're going to have to prove you can stop their A game, or at least contain their A game. And then you're going to have to match them blow for blow when you have the ball. So watch the middle of the field. I mean, that's going to be my big advice to you, is watch the middle of the field. And if they can exploit the linebackers for TCU in the middle, and they can get Mark Perry in some disadvantageous coverage situations, then yeah, it's probably going to be a long night for TCU fans. And they'll just be thankful that they got to this spot. But if TCU can kind of disrupt some things, and they can make it look a little more difficult, and they can make Stetson Bennett under pressure. I mean, J.J. McCarthy's a big dude that can run. Stetson Bennett is not a big dude. He's a 5'10", 5'11" guy. And so, if Jamoy Hodge and Dylan Horton get loose and they pressure Stetson Bennett the way that they pressure J.J. McCarthy, then I think that's kind of where you can cause some problems. But it's going to take, they played good defense against Michigan. Michigan had some big plays, obviously put a ton of points on the board, but they made Michigan do it in a way they weren't comfortable. You're going to have to do the same thing to Georgia. You're going to have to make them uncomfortable, and that's going to be pressuring Stetson Bennett and not letting him attack over the middle of the field. And so that's the recipe for TCU to keep this close. And if you get it sing into the fourth quarter and a 1-score game, that's where you just hope for a little hip-to-toe magic for sure.
So what's your prediction for the national championship on Monday night?
I mean, listen, I don't want to make this call because everything in me says I can't pick a TCU win. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that TCU is going to win this football game. There's absolutely nothing in logic, nothing in football, nothing that makes sense at any level whatsoever that tells me TCU is going to win this game. And so I want to go with my heart, and I feel like every time that I get the opportunity to do that, I'm going to end up picking TCU, because what kind of fan would I be if my university is playing in a college football national championship game and I'm picking them to lose? So how much I believe it's irrelevant, I'm going to say TCU shocks the world and they beat Georgia 31-30. The way that they do it is that they hold Georgia to field goals in the red zone, and Max Duggan has his Heisman moment, either taking his team down for a game-winning field goal by Griffin Kell, or running something in at the last second, on just all guts and all heart quarterback draw, or, carrying 5 guys into the end zone as time expires kind of thing. It's going to take something miraculous. It's going to take something magical. I won't say it with my chest, but I'll say it with a lot of hope and prayers and dreams and everything in between, that TCU somehow pulls off this miracle.
I think
Well,
most
one
of
of the
America wants TCU to win for sure.
yeah. Well, one thing I think that would help TCU is those red zone numbers on offense.
Yeah.
They are 69th in the nation in red zone offense. So you can't just kick field goals. You got to go for TDs.
Well, here's the interesting thing about TCU's red zone offense. They're 69th in scoring in the red zone, correct? Like
Right.
when they get there, here's what happens though. They either score touchdowns or they go for it on fourth down. They don't kick a ton of field goals, but they don't convert on a lot of third and short and fourth and shorts either. And so they did a much better job of that against Michigan. The first touchdown drive that the offense had, they got down to the 1.5, 2 yard line, and it was 3rd and 1, and they could get a first down before they got in the end zone. And after not running a QB sneak in the Big 12 title game, they lined up Max Duggan under center, and they put Amari DeMarcado, and they just pushed his ass across the first down line, and it was a first down. And so I think TCU fans saw that, and we went, okay, we're not going to make the same mistake twice. And so I think that was a big focal point during the 20-plus day layoff, was those short yardage situations. And they executed that really, really well against Michigan. They still left some plays on the field. There were a couple drops. There was a screen pass on a 3rd and 4 that Max kind of sailed. There was a third down pass to Darius Davis that should have been PI and wasn't called. There was a deflection on a slant that ended up in an interception. So they still have some work to do, but it's clearly been a point of emphasis over the last couple of weeks. And so you're right. They cannot settle for 3 points against Georgia unless they're making Georgia settle for 3 points too. But if they get into that red zone, they're playing for 7. And I think you'll see them be very, very aggressive on fourth down on Monday night as well.
I think it's ironic that last year, Georgia was technically the underdog against Alabama, and a lot of people wanted Georgia to win, obviously, because it's Alabama. You didn't want them to win another one. But now Georgia is like Alabama in a lot of people's minds now, all of a sudden, kind of. And now TCU's the ultimate underdog, and everyone wants TCU to get the win unless you're a Georgia fan. I just think it's ironic how the tables have turned that quick on Georgia, and who they're playing. And with TCU, it's just, again, it'd be awesome. It'd be so cool if TCU could get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. The only difference is that TCU wins Monday night, they're probably not starting a dynasty, this is probably it. I mean, they'll be good next year, but they're going to lose so many dudes, and they don't have 5-star stacked up behind them. So yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate underdog story. And, I kind of look at it, when Baylor won a basketball national championship, I didn't want Baylor to win anything. I hate Baylor. I want TCU, screw Baylor. But then you kind of look at it and you go, man, if Baylor can win a national championship, then it's possible for these smaller schools, these second-tier schools, to win the ultimate prize, and it gives you hope as a fan. And so TCU is legitimately, I feel carrying the hope of so many college football fans. There's 128 Division I schools that play football, and annually you feel like there's maybe 4 or 5 of them that can play for a national championship. I mean, TCU is not one of those 4 or 5. It has been the biggest. The closest you can match what this means to the sport is probably the Ohio State National Championship. And what was that, 2002? But it's still Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
This is, maybe this is like Miami kind of rising up in the early 90s as a small private school, but they're it's not. TCU is still very much not Miami. So it is 100% unprecedented, the position that the Horned Frogs are in. And so that's why I think that most of America, most of sports fans and college football fans are looking at this and saying, man, if TCU can do this, it's possible. Anybody can do this. And I think that's why you're going to see just an overwhelming amount of support for the Horned Frogs. Plus, a lot of people are really liking that line of 13 and a half, 14 points. And a lot of people are gonna expect to win a lot of money by betting against the spread here for TCU. So anytime you can win people money, they tend to like you. I don't know if you guys know the story of Mattress Mac down in Houston, but yeah, one of the biggest sports gamblers in the world.
Oh.
He laid $1.5 million on the Frogs to win outright. So, if Mattress Mac is on your side, you got to feel pretty good about where you're at.
Well, he'll be able to make some tens of millions of dollars if TCU wins it all on Monday night. So
That was a
Yeah,
great win
maybe.
for the Frogs in basketball too over Baylor.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the greatest parts of Saturday, the part I keep forgetting about, is we were doing our live Frogs Today show. And I do need to get going here in a couple minutes, but I'll tell a story real quick. We can wrap up. But we're doing our live Frogs Today show from the alumni tailgate in front of the stadium. And we've got the basketball game on the big screen. And so they're down early. And so no one's really paying attention to basketball. They start making that. And this was against Texas Tech. They start making that run. And it's right. Like, it's timing up in like the last 10, 15 minutes of our show. And at one point, like, we literally just went quiet on air to watch the last minute. And we're like, hey, we're going to cut into this feed and just watch this game because this is huge. So they pull off that win over Texas Tech, which was a big win. And then what they did at Baylor the other night with how well Baylor was shooting the ball. Mike Miles, first of all, is the truth. That dude, good Lord, man, he's special. He is so, like, probably the greatest. Like, Desmond Bain is obviously incredible. Mike Miles is unquestionably the most talented guy that TCU suited up in basketball since maybe Kurt Thomas, and he's probably more talented than Kurt Thomas. So watching him play, the way that team plays together, everybody came back. They're super veteran. They like each other. They play well together. What they do in the open floor, it's like watching the Grizzlies play or the Pelicans play. They play so fast. It's so free, and it's a complete antithesis of what Jamie Dixon wants to do. And I give him a ton of credit for saying this is how we're going to be our best. So I'm not going to worry about me. I'm going to let these boys run. And man, they're fun. So it's going to get tough. We're going to lose some games. That's the first win over a ranked opponent on the road TCU's ever had. So it's a huge deal. Like, it's a really good time to be a TCU sports fan. I'll tell you that much.
And what's frustrating with TCU basketball too is because of the fact injuries that happen. But if Mike Miles and that other player, I can't remember his name, if they hadn't been hurt in the Northwestern State game early on in the season when they were struggling against the lower opponents, they'd be undefeated right now. And that it's frustrating because when you don't really follow the sport close enough, people just like, hey, TCU just lost to Northwestern State. They're not actually as good as people thought coming into the season. Well, they are, and they're proving it now that they're healthy. But that Northwestern State loss only happened because they weren't healthy.
Yeah, and I think, it's similar to kind of TCU. Sometimes you need a loss to get you refocused. I think that team early on was believing their own hype a little bit. I mean, they came in with so much love in the preseason, and everybody was predicting them to maybe win the Big 12. They were a dark horse, Sweet 16, Elite 8 potential. They needed to get knocked down a peg and get back to work. And so the nice thing about being in the Big 12 is you'll have plenty of opportunities to make up for that loss. It might hurt them. It may end up hurting them near seeding, but I think that you'll see the committee, if TCU continues what they're doing in Big 12 play, and if they can finish in the top 4 of that conference, it's going to send probably 9 teams to the tournament. 8 looks like the worst case scenario right now. Then I think that they'll say, hey, Damian Baugh, Mike Miles didn't play that game. We'll give them a little bit of a leash there. And hopefully it won't hurt their seeding too bad. But you're absolutely right. I mean, that L just like hangs around your neck right now like an anchor. So hopefully it's not something that kind of hurts them in their seeding come NCAA tournament time, because this is a team that if it gets seeded right has the talent to make it to the Sweet 16 for sure. And if the chips kind of fall correctly, could advance even farther than that. And that's unprecedented. Once again, like TCU's been hot garbage in basketball for so long. So it's fun to see them not just like have a nice run, but to look like a really complete team.
All right. Well, we don't want to keep you here. We know you got to fill up your tank. But thanks so much again for coming, Melissa. You're awesome. Go Frogs.
Hey, if TCU wins on Monday night, you guys let me know. I'll come back on and we can relive the victory together. It's always enjoyable to talk to you guys.
There we go. Stay safe and stay warm on your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Good to meet you, Jeff. Well, you guys keep in touch. If I had so many like requests on like Twitter and stuff, I don't know if I followed it. Just hit me up. And if I don't follow you back, just DM me and I'll make sure I hit you up. So we'll stay in touch over social for sure.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool. All right. Thanks, boys.
All right. See ya.
Bye.